what I was playing just now, Lane?
No, I did not think it polite to listen, sir.
I am sorry for that, for your sake. I do not play accurately. Anyone can play accurately. But I play with wonderful expression.
Yes, sir.
As far as the piano is concerned, sentiment is my forte. I keep science for life.
Yes, sir.
And speaking of the science of life, have you got the cucumber sandwiches cut for Lady Bracknell?
Yes, sir.
Where are they?
Here, sir.
Oh, Lane, I see from your book that on Thursday night, when Lord Shoreham and Mr. Worthing were dining with me, 8 bottles of champagne are entered as having been consumed.
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
Why is it that in a bachelor's establishment the servants invariably drink the champagne? I ask merely for information.
I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, sir. In a married household, the wine is rarely a first-rate brand.
Good heavens. Is marriage so demoralizing as that?
I believe it's a very pleasant state, sir. I don't have much experience myself up to the present. I've only been married once, and that was due to a misunderstanding between myself and a young person.
I don't know that I am much interested in your family life, Lane.
No, sir, it's not a very interesting subject. I don't think of it myself.
And very natural, I'm sure. That will do, Lane, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Ah, just give me another cucumber sandwich.
Yes, sir.
Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. Really, if the lower orders don't set us a good example, what on earth is the use of them? They seem as a class to have absolutely no sense of their moral responsibilities.
Mr. Ernest Worthing.
How are you, my dear Ernest? What brings you to town?
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. What else should bring one anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Algy.
I believe it is customary to take some slight refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since last Thursday?
Oh, in the country.
What on earth do you do there?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It is excessively boring.
And who are the people you amuse?
Oh, neighbours, neighbours.
You got nice neighbours in your part of Shropshire?
Perfectly horrid. Never speak to one of them.
How immensely you must amuse them. Shropshire is your county, Ernest, isn't it?
Shropshire? Yes, of course. Hello, while these cups, why cucumber sandwiches? Who is coming to tea?
Oh, merely Aunt Augusta and Gwendolen.
How perfectly delightful.
Yes, that is all very well. But I'm afraid Aunt Augusta won't quite approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolen is perfectly disgraceful. It is almost as bad as the way Gwendolen flirts with you.
I am in love with Gwendolen. I have come up to town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you had come up for pleasure. I call that business.
How utterly unromantic you are.
I really don't see anything romantic in proposing. It is very romantic to be in love, but there's nothing romantic about a definite proposal. Why, one may be accepted. One usually is, I believe. Then the excitement is all over. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. If ever I get married, I'll certainly try to forget the fact.
I have no doubt about that, dear Algy.
Please, don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. They are ordered specially for Aunt Augusta.
Well, you have been eating them all the time.
That is quite a different matter. She is my aunt. Have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolen. Gwendolen is devoted to bread and butter.
And very good bread and butter it is, too.
Well, my dear fellow, you need not eat it all. You behave just as if you were married to her already. You are not married to her already, and I don't think you ever will be.
Why on earth you say that?
Well, in the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with. Girls don't think it right.
Oh, that is nonsense.
It isn't. It is a great truth. It accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors that one sees all over town. In the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent? What utter nonsense you talk.
My dear fellow, Gwendolen is my first cousin. And before I allow you to marry her, you will have to clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? What do you mean, Algy? What on earth do you mean, Algy, by Cecily? I don't know anyone of the name of Cecily, as far as I can remember.
Bring me that cigarette case Mr. Worthing left in the hall the last time he dined here?
Yes, sir.
Do you mean to say that you have had my cigarette case this whole time? I wish to goodness you would let me know. I've been writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. I was very nearly offering a reward.
Well, I wish you would offer one. I happen to be more than usually hard up.
There is no good offering a reward now that the thing is found.
I must say, I think that is rather horrid of you, Ernest. However, it makes no matter. For now that I look at the inscription inside, I find that the thing isn't yours after all.
Of course it is mine. You've seen me with it 100 times, and you have no right whatsoever to read what's written inside. It is a very ungentlemanly thing to read a private cigarette case.
Oh, it is absurd to have a hard and fast rule about what one should read and what one shouldn't. One should read everything. That's the true basis of modern culture. More than half of modern culture depends on what one shouldn't read.
I'm quite aware of the fact that I don't propose to discuss modern culture. I simply want my cigarette case back.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case is a present from someone of the name of Cecily. And you said you didn't know anyone of that name.
I said I didn't remember knowing anyone of that name. I do remember now. She is my aunt.
Your aunt?
Yes, charming old lady she is too. Lives at Tunbridge Wells. Just get back to me, Algy.
But why does she call herself Little Cecily, if she is your aunt and lives at Tunbridge Wells? From Little Cecily, with her fondest love.
My dear fellow, what on earth is there in that? Some aunts are tall, some aunts are not tall. That is a matter that surely an aunt should be allowed to decide for herself. You seem to think that every aunt should be exactly like your aunt. That is absurd. Now, for heaven's sake, give me back my cigarette case.
Yes, but why does your aunt call you her uncle? From Little Cecily, with her fondest love, to dear Uncle Jack. There's no objection, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt, but why an aunt, no matter what her size may be, should call her own nephew her uncle, I can't make out. Besides, your name isn't Jack at all. It is Ernest.
It isn't Ernest, it's Jack.
You have always told me it was Ernest. I have introduced you to everyone as Ernest. You answer to the name of Ernest. You look as if your name was Ernest. It's perfectly absurd you're saying that your name isn't Ernest. Why, it's on your cards. Here's one of them. Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany Dublin. Now I'll keep this as a proof that your name is Ernest. If you ever attempt to deny it to me, or to Gwendolyn, or to anybody else.
Well, my name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country, and that cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but that does not account for the fact that your small Aunt Cecily, who lives at Tunbridge Wells, calls you her dear uncle. Come, old boy, you had much better have the thing out at once.
My dear Algy, you talk exactly as if you were a dentist. It is very vulgar to talk like a dentist when one isn't a dentist. It produces a false impression.
Well, that is exactly what dentists always do. Now go on. Tell me the whole thing. I may mention that I've always suspected you of being a confirmed and secret Bunburyist, and I'm quite sure of it now.
What on earth do you mean by a Bunburyist?
I'll reveal to you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you are kind enough to inform me why you are Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Well, produce my cigarette case first.
Here it is. Now produce your explanation, and pray, make it remarkable.
My dear fellow, there is nothing at all remarkable about this explanation. Indeed, it is perfectly ordinary. Old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a little boy under rather peculiar circumstances and left me all the money I possess, made me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who addresses me as uncle for motives of respect, resides at my place in the country under the charge of her admirable governess, Miss Prism.
Where is that place in the country, by the way?
That is nothing to you, dear boy. You are not going to be invited. I may tell you candidly the place is not in Shropshire.
I suspected that, my dear fellow. I have Bunburied all over Shropshire on 2 separate occasions. Now go on. Why are you Jack in the country and Ernest in town?
I don't know if you'll be able to understand my real motives. You are hardly serious enough. When one is placed in the position of guardian, one has to adopt a very high moral tone on all subjects. It is one's duty to do so, and as a high moral tone cannot be said to conduce very much to either one's health or one's happiness, if carried to excess. In order to get up to town, I have always pretended I have a younger brother of the name of Earnest, who lives at the Albany and gets into the most dreadful scrapes. That, my dear Algy, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure and never simple. Modern life would be very tedious if it was either. And modern literature a complete impossibility.
That wouldn't be at all a bad thing.
Literary criticism isn't your forte, my dear fellow. Don't try it. What you really are is a Bunburyist. You are one of the most advanced Bunburyists I know.
What on earth do you mean?
You have invented a very useful younger brother called Ernest, in order that you may be able to come up to town as often as you like. I have invented an invaluable permanent invalid called Bunbury, in order that I may go down into the country whenever I choose.
What nonsense.
It isn't nonsense. Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. If it weren't for Bunbury's extraordinary bad health, for instance, I wouldn't be able to dine with you at the Savoy tonight, for I've been really engaged to Aunt Augusta for more than a week.
I haven't asked you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
I know. You are absurdly careless about sending out invitations. Nothing annoys people so much as not receiving invitations.
Well, I can't dine at the Savoy. I owe them about £700. They're always getting judgments and things against me. They bother my life out.
Why on earth don't you pay them? You have got heaps of money.
Yes, but Ernest hasn't, and I have to keep up Ernest's reputation. Ernest is one of those chaps who never pay a bill. He gets written about once a week.
Well, let us dine at Willis's.
You would much better dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I haven't the smallest intention of doing anything of the kind. To begin with, I dine there on Monday, and once a week is quite often enough to dine with one's own relations. In second place, whenever I do dine there, I am treated as a member of the family. In the third place, I know perfectly well who she will place me next to tonight. She will place me next to Mary Farquhar, who always flirts with her own husband across the dinner table. That is not very pleasant. Indeed, it is not even decent. And that sort of thing is enormously on the increase. The amount of women in London who flirt with their own husbands is perfectly scandalous. Besides, now that I know you to be a confirmed and secret Bunburyist, I naturally want to talk to you about Bunburying. I want to tell you the rules.
I am not a Bunburyist at all. If Gwendolyn accepts me, I shall naturally kill my brother. Indeed, I think I'll kill him in any case. Cecily is growing a great deal too much interested in him. She is always asking me to forgive him and that sort of thing. It is rather a bore, so yes, I think I'll get rid of Ernest. And I would strongly advise you to do the same with your friend Bunbury.
I haven't the smallest intention of doing anything of the kind. And if you ever get married, which seems to me extremely problematic, you will be very glad to know Bunbury. A man who marries without knowing Bunbury has a very tedious time of it.
That is nonsense. If ever I get married to a charming girl like Gwendolyn, and Gwendolyn is the only girl that I would ever marry, I certainly won't want to know Bunbury.
Then your wife will. You don't seem to realize, my dear fellow, that in married life, 3 is company and 2 is none.
That, my dear Algy, is the theory that the corrupt French drama has been propounding for the last 50 years.
Yes, and that the happy English home is proved in half the time. That is the worst of the English. They are always degrading truths into facts. And when a truth becomes a fact, it loses all its intellectual value.
Do you always really understand what you say, Algy?
Yes, if I listen attentively. That must be Aunt Augusta. Now, if I get Aunt Augusta out of the way for 10 minutes, so that you can have an opportunity for proposing to Gwendolyn, may I dine with you tonight at Willis's?
I suppose so, if you want to.
Yes, but you must be serious about it. I hate people who are not serious about meals. It is so shallow of them.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Well, dear Algernon, I hope you are well. Good afternoon, Mr. Worthing.
Good afternoon, Aunt Augusta. Dear me, you are smart.
I am always smart.
I know. That is why I said it. If a woman isn't always smart, she is never smart.
Now don't try to be clever, Algy. It doesn't become you at all.
It is not becoming to anybody.
On the contrary, it is excessively becoming to me. Isn't it, Mr. Worthing?
Everything is becoming to you, Miss Fairfax.
Won't you come over and sit here, Gwendolyn?
Thanks, Mamma. I'm quite comfortable where I am.
Sorry for your little late, Algernon, but I was obliged to call on dear Lady Harbury. I had not been there since her poor husband's death. I never saw a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger. I'll have some tea now and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta. Good heavens. Why are there no cucumber sandwiches made? I ordered them specially.
There were no cucumbers down at the market this morning, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers?
No, sir, not even for ready money.
That will do, Lane, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I am greatly distressed, Aunt Augusta, about there being no cucumbers. Not even for ready money.
Makes no matter, Algernon. Have some crumpets with Lady Harvey, who seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure now.
Yes, I hear her hair has turned quite gold from grief.
Certainly has changed its colour. From what cause, of course, I cannot say. I'm going to send you down to dinner with Mary Farquhar tonight. She is such a nice young woman, and so attentive to her husband.
Do you know, Aunt Augusta, I'm afraid I shall have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight, after all.
I hope not, Algernon.
Yes, it is a great bore, but the fact is I've just had a telegram to say that my poor friend Bunbury is very ill again. They seem to think I should be with him. I promised to go down by the 6:40 from King's Cross.
It is very strange. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes. Poor Bunbury's a terrible invalid.
But I must say, Algernon, I think it is high time this Mr. Bunbury made up his mind whether he was going to live or not. Shilly-shallying with the question is absurd. Illness of any kind is hardly a thing to be encouraged in others. Health is the primary duty of life. But of course, if you're obliged to be by the bedside of Mr. Bunbury, I have nothing more to say. But I would be much obliged if you would ask Mr. Bunbury from me to be kind enough not to have a relapse on Saturday. Rely on you to arrange my music. It is my last reception, and one wants something that encourages conversation, particularly at the end of the season when everyone has practically said whatever they had to say.
Ah, and that is the difficulty, Aunt Augusta. You see, when one plays good music, people don't listen. And when one plays bad music, they don't talk. But I'll tell you my ideas on the subject if you will come into the next room for a moment. I've drawn out a programme.
Thank you, Algernon, which is very thoughtful of you. I'm sure the programme will be delightful. After a few expurgations, French songs I cannot possibly allow. People always seem to think they're improper and either look shocked, which is vulgar, or laugh, which is worse. But German sounds a thoroughly respectable language, and I believe it's so. See you again, no doubt, Mr. Worthing.
Charming day it has been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I always fear that they mean something else, and that makes me so nervous.
I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I'm never wrong.
And I would like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
I would certainly advise you to do so. Mamma has a way of coming back suddenly into a room that I have often had to speak to her about.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I met you, I have admired you more than any girl that I have ever met since I met you.
Yes, I'm quite aware of that. And I often wish that in public, at any rate, you had been more demonstrative. For me, you have always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals, and my ideal has always been to love someone of the name of Earnest. There is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment Algernon first mentioned to me that he had a friend called Earnest, I knew I was destined to love him. The name, fortunately for my peace of mind, is, as far as my own experience goes, extremely rare.
You really love me, Gwendolen.
Passionately.
Darling Gwendolen.
My own Earnest.
Of course, you don't mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Ernest.
But your name is Earnest.
Yes, I know it is. But, supposing it was something else. Do you mean to say you couldn't love me then?
Ah, that's clearly a metaphysical speculation, and like all metaphysical speculation, has very little reference at all to the actual facts of real life as we know them.
Yes, but darling, to speak quite candidly, I don't care much for the name of Ernest. I don't think the name suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It is a divine name. It has a music of its own. It produces vibrations.
Yes, but darling, don't you think that there are lots of other, much nicer names out there? I think Jack, for instance, a charming name.
Jack. No, there is very little music in the name Jack, if any at all indeed. It is not real. It produces absolutely no vibrations. I've known several Jacks, and they all, without exception, were more than usually plain. Besides, Jack's notorious domesticity for John, and I pity any woman who is married to a man called John. She would have a very tedious life with him. she would probably never have the pleasure of knowing a single moment's solitude. The only really safe name is Earnest.
Gwendolyn, I must get christened at once. I mean, we must get married at once. There is no time to be lost.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, surely. You know that I love you, and you had led me to believe, Miss Fairfax, that you are not absolutely indifferent to me.
I adore you, but you haven't proposed to me yet. Nothing has been said at all about marriage. The subject has not even been touched on.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I think it would be an admirable opportunity. To spare you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I think it only fair to tell you quite frankly beforehand that I'm fully determined to accept you.
Gwendolyn,
Yes, Mr. Worthing, what is it you've got to say to me?
you know what I have got to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it.
Gwendolyn, Gwendolyn, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling. How long you've been about it. I'm afraid you have had very little experience in how to propose.
My own one, I have never loved anyone in the world but you.
I know that, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother does. He tells me so. What wonderful blue eyes you have, Ernest. They are quite blue. I hope you will always look at me just like that, especially when there are other people present.
Mr. Worthing! Rise, sir, from this semi-recumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
Mamma, I must beg you to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing is not quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
I'm engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Pardon me, you are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged, I or your father, should his health permit him, will inform you of the fact. Engagement should come on a young girl as a surprise, pleasant or unpleasant, as the case may be. It is hardly a thing she should be allowed to decide for herself. And now, Mr. Worthing, I have some questions to put to you.
I shall be charmed to reply to any questions, Lady Bracknell.
You mean if you know the answers to them? Mamma's questions are sometimes peculiarly inquisitorial.
I intend to make them very inquisitorial. And while I'm making these enquiries, you, Gwendolyn, will wait for me below in the carriage.
Mamma!
In the carriage, Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn! The carriage!
Yes, Mamma!
You may take a chair, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer standing.
You're not down on my list of eligible young men. You have the same list as the Duchess of Bolton has. We work together, in fact. However, I am quite ready to enter your name, should your answers be what a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes, I must admit that I smoke.
I'm glad to hear it. A man should have an occupation of some kind. Far too many idle men in London as it is. How old are you?
29.
Very good age to be married at. I've always been of the opinion that a man who desires to be married should either know everything or know nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I'm pleased to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate, exotic fruit. Touch it and the bloom is gone. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or investment?
In investments, Lady Bracknell.
That is satisfactory. What with the duties expected of one during one's life, and the duties exacted from one after one's death, land has ceased to be either a profit or a pleasure. It gives one position while preventing them from keeping it up. That's all there is to be said about that.
I do own a country house, and some land, of course, attached to it, but I don't depend on that for my real income.
A country house, how many bedrooms does it have? That point can be cleared up afterwards. You have a townhouse, I hope. A girl like Gwendolyn with a simple, unspoiled nature can hardly be expected to reside in the country.
Well, I do own a house in Belgium Square, but it's let by the year to Lady Bloxham. I have never lived in it. Of course, I can give it back whenever I like.
Lady Bloxham, I don't know her.
Oh, she goes about very little. She's a lady considerably advanced in years.
Nowadays that is no guarantee of respectability of character. What number at Belgrave Square?
149.
The unfashionable side. However, that can easily be altered.
Do you mean the fashion or the side, Lady Bracknell?
Both, if necessary, I presume. What are your politics?
Well, I'm afraid I really have none. I'm a liberal unionist.
Oh, they count as Tories. They dine with us, or come in the evening at any rate. You have, of course, no sympathy of any kind with the Radical Party.
Well, I don't want to put the asses against the classes, if that's what you mean, Lady Bracknell.
It is exactly what I do mean. Ahem. Are your parents living?
I've lost both my parents.
Oh. To lose one parent may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both seems like carelessness. Who is your father?
I'm afraid I really don't know. I said that I had lost my parents. The truth is, Lady Bracknell, my parents seem to have lost me. I don't know who I am. I was found. The late Mr. Thomas Cardew, an old gentleman of a kindly and charitable disposition, found me and gave me the name of Worthing because he happened to have a ticket for Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing is a place in Sussex. It is a seaside
And where
resort.
did the charitable gentleman with the ticket for the seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag.
Yes, Lady Bracknell, a somewhat large black leather handbag with handles to it, an ordinary handbag, in fact.
And in what locality did this Mr. Cardew come across this ordinary handbag?
In the cloakroom at Victoria Station.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station.
Yes, the Brighton line.
The line is immaterial. I must confess, Mr. Worthing, I am somewhat bewildered by what you have just told me. To be born or to at any rate bred in a handbag, whether it had handles or not, seems to me to show a contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life that reminds one of the worst excesses of the French Revolution. And I presume you know what that unfortunate movement led to. As to the particular locality in which the handbag was found, a cloakroom at a railway station might serve to conceal a social indiscretion, has indeed probably been used for that purpose before now, but can hardly be regarded as an assured basis for a respected position in good society.
May I ask then, Lady Bracknell, what you would advise me to do now? I need hardly say that I would do anything in the world to ensure Gwendolyn's happiness.
Would strongly advise you, Mr. Worthing, to acquire some relations, and to make a definite effort to produce one parent of either sex before the season is quite over.
I don't see how I could possibly manage to do that, Lady Bracknell. I can produce the handbag at any time. It is in my bedroom at home. I really think that should satisfy you.
Me, Mr. Worthing? What has it got to do with me? You can hardly imagine that Lord Bracknell and myself would dream of allowing our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel. You of course understand that for the future there is to be no communication of any kind between yourself and Miss Fairfax.
Stop playing that ghastly tune, Algie! How idiotic you are!
Didn't it go up all right, old boy? You don't mean to say Gwendolyn refused you? If she did, you will have to propose to her again, that's all. If she refuses you a second time, she is sure to marry you.
Oh, Gwendolyn is as right as a trivet. As far as she is concerned, we are engaged. Her mother, on the other hand, is perfectly unbearable. I never met such a gorgon in all my life. I don't really know what a gorgon is. But I'm quite sure that she is one. Besides, she is a monster without being a myth, which I think is rather unfair of her. I beg your pardon, Algie. I suppose I shouldn't talk this way about your own aunt in front of you.
My dear boy, I love hearing my relatives abused. It is the only thing that makes me put up with them at all.
I don't know a thing about relations. I haven't got any relations.
You are a lucky fellow. Relations never lend one any money and won't give one credit, even for genius. They are a sort of aggravated form of the public.
And after all, what does it matter whether a man has got a mother and a father or not? Anything in the papers?
Nothing.
What a comfort.
There is never anything in the papers, as far as I can see.
On the contrary, I think there is a great deal too much in them. They're always bothering one about people one doesn't know, one has never met, and one doesn't care tuppence about.
I think people one hasn't met are charming. I'm very much interested in a girl I have never met.
That is nonsense.
It isn't.
Well, I won't argue with you about the matter. You always want to argue about things.
That is exactly what things were originally made for.
Upon my word, if I thought that, I'd shoot myself. You don't suppose, Algie, there's any chance of Gwendolyn becoming like her mother in about 150 years, do you?
All women become like their mothers. That is their tragedy. No man does. That is his.
Is that clever?
It is perfectly phrased and quite as true as anything in modern life should be.
Well, I am sick to death of cleverness. One can't go anywhere without meeting clever people. I wish to goodness we had a few fools left.
We have
Well, I should extremely like to meet them. What do they talk about?
the fools. Oh, about the clever people, of course.
What fools?
By the way, did you tell Gwendolyn the truth about your being Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear fellow, that isn't the sort of thing one says to a nice, sweet, refined girl like Gwendolyn. What extraordinary ideas you have about the way to behave to women.
The only way to behave to women is to make love to them if they are pretty, and to someone else if they are plain.
Oh, there's nonsense.
What about the young lady whose guardian you are, Miss Cardoon?
Oh, Cecily is all right. Before the end of the week, I shall have got rid of my brother. I think I'll kill him in Paris.
Why Paris?
Oh, less trouble. No nonsense about a funeral or that sort of thing. Apoplexy. Apoplexy will do perfectly well. Lots of people die of apoplexy quite suddenly, don't they?
Yes, but it's hereditary, my dear fellow. It's a sort of thing that runs in families.
Oh, good heavens, I can't choose that. Then what can I say?
Oh, say the influenza.
No, that won't sound probable at all. Far too many people have had it.
Oh, well, say anything you choose. Say a severe chill, that's all right.
You are sure a severe chill isn't hereditary or anything dreadful of that kind?
Of course it isn't.
Very well then, that is settled.
But I thought you said that Miss Cardew was a little too much interested in your poor brother Ernest.
Oh, Cecily is not the romantic type at all. She's got a capital appetite and goes long walks and that sort of thing.
I should rather like to see Cecily.
I shall take very good care you never do. And you are not to speak of her as Cecily.
Ah, yes. I know perfectly well what she is like. She is one of those dull, intellectual girls one sees all over the place. Girls who have got large minds and large feet. I am sure she is more than usually plain, and I suspect she is about 39 and looks it.
She happens to be excessively pretty and is only just 18.
Have you told Gwendolyn yet that you have an excessively pretty ward who is only just 18?
One doesn't blurt those sort of things out to people. Life is a question of tact. Cecily and Gwendolyn are certain to be extremely great friends. Probably half an hour after they have met, they will be calling each other sister.
Women only do that when they have had a fearful quarrel and called each other a lot of other things first. Now, my dear boy, if we want to get a good table of Willis's, we really must go and dress. Do you know it is nearly 7?
No, it is always nearly 7.
Well, I'm hungry.
I never knew you when you weren't. However, all right. I'll go round to the Albany and meet with Willis's at 8. You may call for me on the way if you like.
Very well. And what shall we do after dinner? Go to a theatre?
No, I loathe listening.
Well, let us go to the club.
No, I hate talking.
Well, we might trot round to the Empire at 10.
No, I can't stand looking at things. It is so silly.
Well, what shall we do?
Nothing.
It is awfully hard work doing nothing.
Miss Gwendolyn Fairfax.
Gwendolyn?
Algy, kindly turn your back. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthy. As it is somewhat of a private matter, you will of course listen.
Really, Gwendolyn, I don't think I can allow this at all.
Algy, you always adopt a strictly immoral attitude towards life. You're not quite old enough to do that. Pray oblige me by looking out of the window. Ernest.
Dearest Gwendolyn.
We may never be married, Ernest. From the look on Mamma's face, I fear we never shall. Few parents nowadays pay any regard to what their children say to them. The old-fashioned respect for the young is rapidly dying out. Whatever influence I ever had over Mamma, I lost at the age of 2. But though she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and I may marry someone else, and marry often, nothing that she can possibly do can alter my eternal devotion to you.
Darling.
The story of your romantic origin, as related to me by Mamma, with unpleasing comments, has naturally stirred the deeper fibers of my nature. Your Christian name is an irresistible fascination. The simplicity of your nature makes you incomprehensible to me. Your town address at the Albany I have. What is your address in the country?
The Manor House, Woolton, Hertfordshire.
There is a good postal service there, I suppose. It may be necessary to do something desperate. That, of course, will require serious consideration. I'll communicate with you daily.
My own one.
Algy, you may turn round now. Goodbye.
Charming girl. The most beautiful creature I've ever met. Come, Algie. I'm going to give you the best dinner in London. What are you laughing about?
I hope to goodness tomorrow will be a fine day.
It never is. But what are you going to do tomorrow?
Tomorrow, my dear boy, I am going Bunburying.
What nonsense.
I love nonsense.
Cecily, Cecily, surely such a utilitarian occupation as the rearranging of flowers is rather Moulton's duty than yours, especially at a moment when intellectual pleasures await you. Your German lesson has been waiting for nearly 20 minutes.
Oh, I wish you would give Moulton the German lesson instead of me. Moulton!
Hey, Miss Cecily.
Wouldn't you like to know German, Moulton? German. It's the language talked by people who live in Germany.
Oh, I don't hold with them foreign tongues, miss. No offense to you, ma'am.
Cecily, this will never do. Pray open your Schiller at once.
I don't like German. It isn't at all a becoming language. I know perfectly well that I look quite plain after my German lesson.
Child, you know how anxious your guardian is that you should improve yourself in every way. He laid particular stress on your German as he was leaving for town yesterday.
Dear Uncle Jack is so very serious. Sometimes he is so serious I think he cannot be quite well.
Cecily, your guardian enjoys the best of health, and his gravity of demeanor is to be commended in one so comparatively young as he is.
I suppose that is why he often looks a little bored when we three are together.
Cecily, I am surprised at you. Mr. Worthing has many troubles in his life. Idle merriment and triviality would be out of place in his conversation. You must remember his constant anxiety about that unfortunate young man, his brother.
I wish you would allow that unfortunate man and his brother to come down with sometimes. We might have a good influence over him, Miss Prism. I'm sure you certainly would. You know German and geology and things of that kind that influence a man very much.
I do not think that even I could produce any effect on a character that, according to his own brother's admission, is irretrievably weak and vacillating. Indeed, I am not sure I would desire to reclaim him. I'm not in favor of this modern mania of turning bad people into good people at a moment's notice. As a man sows, so let him reap.
But men don't sow, Miss Prism. And if they did, I don't see why they should be punished for it. There's a great deal too much punishment in the world. German is a punishment, certainly, and there is far too much German. You told me yourself yesterday that Germany was overpopulated.
That is no reason why you should be writing in your diary instead of translating William Tell. You should put your diary away, Cecily. I really don't see why you should keep one at all.
I keep a diary in order to enter all the wonderful secrets of my life. If I didn't write them down, I should probably forget all about them.
Memory, my dear Cecily, is the diary we all carry about with us.
Yes, but it usually chronicles the things that have never happened and couldn't possibly have happened. I believe that memory is responsible for nearly all the 3-volume novels that every cultivated woman writes nowadays and no educated man ever reads.
Do not speak slightingly of the 3-volume novel, Cecily. I wrote one myself in earlier days.
Did you really, Miss Prism? How wonderfully clever you are. I hope it did not end happily. I don't like novels that end happily. They depress me so much.
The good ended happily, the bad unhappily. That is what fiction means.
I suppose so, but it doesn't seem quite fair, does it? And was your novel ever published?
Alas, no. The manuscript was abandoned. I use the word in the sense of lost or mislaid. To your work, child, these speculations are profitless.
But I see dear Dr. Charleston coming up through the garden.
Dr. Chasuble, this is indeed a pleasure.
And how are we this morning? Miss Prism, you are, I trust, well.
Oh, Miss Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache. I think it would do her so much good to have a short stroll with you in the park, Dr. Chasuble.
Cecily, I have said nothing about a headache.
Oh, no. I know that, dear Miss Prism. But I felt instinctively that you had a headache. Indeed, I was thinking about that and not my German lesson when the rector came in.
Cecily, I hope you're not inattentive.
Oh, I am afraid I am terribly inattentive.
That is strange. Were I fortunate enough to be Miss Prism's pupil, I would hang upon her lips.
I spoke metaphorically. Metaphorically.
I drew my metaphor from bees. Has Mr. Worthing returned from town yet?
We do not expect him until Monday afternoon.
Ah, yes, he does like to spend his Sundays in town. He's not one of those whose sole aim in life is enjoyment, as by all accounts that unfortunate young man his brother seems to be. But I must not disturb Egeria and her pupil any longer.
Egeria? But my name is Letitia, Doctor.
Merely a wonderful cultural idea drawn from the pagan authors. But no doubt I shall see both of you at Enns.
I think, dear Doctor, that I will have that straw with you. It might do my headache good.
Pleasure. Pleasure. We might go as far as the school and back.
That would be delightful. Oh, Cecily, in my absence, you'll read your political economy. The chapter on the fall of the rupee you may omit. Somewhat too sensational for a young girl.
Reading political economy, Cecily, was now you must know all the relations between capital and labor.
Oh, I am afraid I am not learned at all. All I know is about the relations between capital and idleness, and that is merely from observation, so I don't suppose it can be true.
Cecily, that sounds like socialism. And I suppose you know where socialism leads to?
Oh, yes, it leads to rational dress. And when a woman is dressed rationally, she is treated rationally. She certainly deserves to be.
A willful lamb.
A sad struggle sometimes.
I envy you such tribulations.
Horrid political economy. Horrid geography. Horrid German.
Mr. Ernest Worthing has just driven over in a cab from the station. He has brought his luggage with him.
Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4 the Albany W. Uncle Jack's brother. Have you told him Mr. Worthing was in town?
Yes, miss. He seemed very much disappointed. I mentioned that you, Miss Prism, were the garden. He seemed anxious to speak to both of you for a moment.
Oh, I don't think Miss Prism would like my being alone with him, so I'd better send for him at once before she comes here. Ask Mr. Worthing to come here at once, and I suppose you had better ask a housekeeper about a room for him.
I've already sent his luggage up to the blue room, miss, next to Mr. Worthing's own room.
Oh, that is all right. I've never met any really wicked person before. I am rather frightened. I am so afraid he would look just like everyone else. He does.
You are little Miss Cecily, I am sure.
I am afraid you are terribly mistaken. I am not little. In fact, I believe I am unusually tall for my age. You, I see from your card, are Uncle Jack's wicked brother.
I am not really wicked at all, Miss Cecily.
If you are not, then you have certainly been deceiving us all in a very inexcusable manner. You have made Uncle Jack believe that you are very bad. I hope that you have not been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and being really good all along. That would be hypocrisy.
Oh, of course I have been rather reckless.
I'm glad to hear it.
In fact, I have been very wicked in my own small way.
I don't think you should look so pleased, though it must have been quite pleasant.
It is much pleasanter being here with you.
I can't understand how you were here at all. Uncle Jack telegraphed to you yesterday at the Albany that he would see you for the last time at 6 o'clock.
The fact is I didn't get the telegram till it was too late. Then I missed him at the club, and the hall porter said he thought he had come down here. So of course I followed as I knew he wanted to see me.
You won't be back till Monday afternoon.
That is a great disappointment. I'm obliged to go up by the first train on Monday morning. I have a business appointment that I'm anxious to miss.
Couldn't you miss it anywhere but in London?
No, the appointment is in London.
Well, I know, of course, how important it is not to keep a business engagement if one wants to retain any sense of beauty in life. But still, I think you had better wait till Uncle Jack arrives. I know he wants to speak to you about your emigrating.
About my what?
You're emigrating. He has gone up to buy your outfit.
I certainly wouldn't let Jack buy my outfit. He has no taste in neckties at all.
Oh, I don't think he will be requiring neckties. He is sending you to Australia.
Australia? I'd sooner shoot myself.
Well, he said on Wednesday night that you would have to choose between this world, the next world, and Australia.
Ah. Well, the accounts I've received of Australia and the next world are not particularly encouraging. This world is good enough for me, Cousin Cecily.
Yes, but are you good enough for it?
I wish you would reform me. You might make that your mission.
How dare you suggest that I have a mission?
I beg your pardon. But I thought every woman had a mission of some kind nowadays.
Every female has. No woman. Besides, I have no time to reform you this afternoon.
Well, would you mind my reforming myself this afternoon?
It is rather quixotic of you, but I think you should try.
I feel better already.
You are looking a little worse.
That is because I am hungry.
How thoughtless of me. I should have remembered that when one is going to lead an entirely new life, one requires regular and wholesome meals. Miss Prism and I lunch at 2 off some roast mutton.
I fear that would be too rich for me.
Well, Uncle Jack, whose health has been sadly undermined by the late hours you keep in town, has been ordered by his doctor to have some pâté de foie gras sandwiches and a small bottle of 1874 champagne at 12. I don't know if such invalid fare would suit you.
Oh, I will be quite content with 74 champagne.
I'm glad to see you have such simple tastes.
Thank you. Might I have a buttonhole first? I never have any appetite unless I have a buttonhole first.
A marchandier.
No, I'd sooner have a pink rose.
Why?
Because you are just like a pink rose, Miss Cecily.
I don't think it is right for you to be talking to me like that. Miss Prism never says such things to me.
Then Miss Prism is a short-sighted old lady. You are the prettiest girl I ever saw.
Miss Prism says that all good looks are a snare.
They are a snare that every sensible man would like to be caught in.
Oh, I don't think I'd care to catch a sensible man. I wouldn't know what to talk to him about.
You are too much alone, dear doctor. You should get married. A misanthrope I can understand. A womanthrope, never.
Believe me, I do not deserve such a neologistic a phrase. The precept, as well as the practice of the primitive church, was distinctly against matrimony.
That is obviously the reason why the primitive church has not lasted up to the present day. And you do not seem to realize, dear doctor, that by persistently remaining single, a man converts himself into a permanent public temptation.
Yeah.
You should be more careful. You may lead weaker vessels astray.
But is a man not equally attractive when married?
No married man is ever attractive, except to his wife.
And often I've been told, not even to her.
That depends on the intellectual sympathies of the woman. Maturity can always be depended on. Ripeness can be trusted. Young women are green. I spoke horticulturally. My metaphor was drawn from fruits.
Oh, Mr. Worthing.
Mr. Worthing, we were not discussing you.
I have returned sooner than I expected. Dr. Johnson, I hope you're well.
Mr. Worthing, I trust this garb of woe does not betoken some terrible calamity.
My brother!
More shameful deaths and extravagances.
Still leading the life of pleasure.
Dead!
Dead? Your brother Ernest dead?
Quite dead.
What a lesson for him. I trust you will profit by it.
Death is an inheritance of us all, Miss Prism. Life, we're incomplete without it. Mr. Worthing, I offer you my sincere condolences. You at least have the consolation of knowing you're always the most generous and forgiving of brothers.
Poor Ernest. He had many faults, but it is a sad blow.
Very sad indeed. Were you with him at the end?
No, he died abroad. In Paris. I had a telegram last night from the manager of the hotel.
Was the cause of death mentioned?
A severe chill.
As a man sows, so let him reap.
Charity, dear Miss Prism. Charity. Charity. Charity, dear Miss Prism, charity. None of us are perfect. I myself am particularly susceptible to drafts. Shall the interment take place here?
No. He seems to have expressed a desire to be buried in Paris.
Paris? I hardly think that points to any serious state of mind at the last. No doubt you'd like me to make some slight allusion to this tragic domestic affliction next Sunday. My sermon on the man in the wilderness can be adapted to almost any occasion. Joyous, as in the present case, distressing. I preached it on harvest celebrations, christenings, confirmations, days of humiliation, on joyous days. The last time I delivered it, I was in the cathedral. It was a charity sermon for the prevention of discontent amongst the upper orders.
Oh, that reminds me, Dr. Charles. Well, you mentioned christenings, didn't you? I mean, you do know how to christen, all right? You are continually christening, aren't you?
Tis, I regret to say, one of the rector's most constant duties in this parish.
The church rejects no babies, Prism. Inside each and every child, there's the making of a saint. But was there any particular child you were interested in having christened? Your brother was, I believe, unmarried. Was he not?
Oh,
Yes!
Those who live entirely for pleasure usually are.
no, but it is not for any child, dear doctor. I'm very fond of children, but I myself would like to be baptized this afternoon, if you have nothing better to do.
But surely, Mr. Worthing, you've been christened already.
I don't remember anything about it.
Have you any grave doubts on the subject?
I have the very gravest doubts. There are circumstances unnecessary to mention at present connected with my birth and early life that make me think I was a good deal neglected. I certainly wasn't properly looked after at any rate. Of course, I don't know if it would bother you or if you think I'm a little too old now.
Oh, I'm by no means a bigoted pedibaptist. The sprinkling, indeed the immersion, of young adults is a perfectly commonplace practice in the primitive church.
Immersion? You don't mean to say...
No, you need not have any apprehensions. Sprinkling is all that is necessary, or at least I think advisable. Our weather is so changeable. And what hour would you like the ceremony to be performed?
Oh, I might trot round after lunch, about 3, if that would suit you.
Oh, perfectly. In fact, I have a similar case to perform at the same time. A case of twins. It recently occurred on one of the outlying cottages on your own estate.
I don't see much fun in being baptized along with other babies. It would be childish. Would 5:30 do?
Oh, admirably, admirably. And now, Mr. Worthing, I shall no longer intrude into a house of sorrow. I just ask that you're not to bow down by grief. Often, these bitter trials are blessings in disguise.
Seems to me a blessing, extremely obvious kind.
Uncle Jack! Oh, I am pleased to see you back. What horrid clothes you have got on! Do go and change them.
Cecily!
What is the matter? Uncle Jack, do be happy. You look as if you had got toothache, and I've got such a surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room? Your brother!
Who?
Your brother Ernest! He arrived about a half an hour ago.
What nonsense, I haven't got a brother.
Oh. Uncle Jack, don't say that. However badly he may have behaved to you in the past, he is still your brother. You couldn't be so heartless as to disown him. I'll go tell him to come out, and you will shake his hand, won't you, Uncle Jack?
These are joyful tidings. It appears that telegram you received was a cruel jest played upon by someone who wanted to hurt your feelings.
After we had all been resigned to his loss, his sudden return seems to me peculiarly distressing.
My brother's in the dining room. I don't know what it all means. I think it perfectly absurd.
Brother John, I have come down from town to tell you that I'm very sorry for all the trouble I've given you, and that I intend to lead a better life in the future.
There is good in that young man. He's sincerely repentant.
I'm not in favor of these sudden conversions. They belong to the descent.
Uncle Jack, you are not going to refuse your own brother's hand.
Nothing will induce me to shake his hand. I think his coming down here disgraceful. He knows perfectly well why.
Young man, you've had a very narrow escape of your life. I hope it shall serve as a warning to you. We were mourning your demise when you entered.
Yes, I see Jack has got a new suit of clothes. They don't fit him properly. His necktie is wrong.
Uncle Jack, do be nice. There is some good in everyone. Ernest has just been telling me about his poor invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, whom he goes to visit so often. If a man leaves London to go visit a sick friend, there must be some good in him.
Oh, he's been telling you about Bunbury, has he?
Yes, Ernest told me all about Mr. Bunbury and his terrible state of health.
Well, I shall take very good care he never speaks to you again about Bunbury or anything else. It is enough to drive one perfectly frantic.
Mr. Worthing, your brother has been suddenly restored to you by mysterious dispensations. Which seem to desire your reconciliation. And indeed, it is good for brothers to dwell in amity.
Of course, I admit that the faults were all on my side, But I must say that I think that Brother John's coldness to me is peculiarly painful. I expected a warmer welcome, especially considering it is the first time I have come here.
Uncle Jack, do shake hands with Ernest. I will never forgive you if you don't.
Never forgive me.
Never, never, never.
I suppose I must then. You young scoundrel, you get out of this place as soon as possible. I don't allow any bunburying here.
I put Mr. Earnest's things in the room next to your own, sir. I suppose that is all right.
What?
His luggage, sir. I've unpacked it and placed it in the room next to your own.
His luggage?
Yes, sir. 3 portmanteaus, a dressing case, 2 hat boxes, and a large luncheon basket.
I'm afraid I can't stay more than a week this time.
I beg your pardon, sir. There was an elderly gentleman here who wishes to see you. He has just driven in a cab from the station.
See me? Parker and Grimsby, solicitors. I don't know anything about them. Who are they?
Parker and Grimsby, solicitors. I expect, Ernest, they have come about some business for your friend Bunbury. Perhaps Bunbury wishes to make his will and wants you to be executor. Show the gentleman in at once.
Very good, sir.
I hope, Ernest, that I may rely on the statements you made to me last week when I finally settled all your bills for you. I hope you have no outstanding accounts of any kind.
I haven't any debts at all, dear Jack. Thanks to your generosity, I don't owe a penny. Except for a few neckties, I believe.
I am sincerely glad to hear it.
Mr. Gwibsby. Mr. Gwibsby. Mr. Gwibsby. Mr. Gwibsby.
Mr. Earnest Worthing!
This is Mr. Ernest Worthing.
Mr. Earnest Worthing!
Yes?
Of B4 the Albany.
Yes, that is my address.
I am very sorry, sir, but I have a writ of attachment for 20 days against you at the suit of the Savoy Hotel Company Limited for £762, 14 shillings, twopence.
Against me?
Yes, sir.
What perfect nonsense. I never dine at the Savoy at my own expense. I always dine at Willis's. It is far more expensive. I don't owe a penny to the Savoy.
The writ is marked as having been served on you personally at the Albany on May the 27th. A judgment was given in default against you on the 5th of June. Since then, we've written to you no less than 15 times without receiving any reply. So, in the interest of our client, we had no option but to obtain an order of committal of your person.
Committal? What on earth do you mean by committal? I haven't the smallest intention of going away. I'm staying here for a week. I'm staying with my brother. If you imagine I'm going up to town the moment I arrive, you are extremely mistaken.
I am merely a solicitor myself. I do not employ any personal violence of any kind. The officer of the court whose function it is to seize the person of the debtor is waiting in the fly outside. He has considerable experience in these matters, which is why we always employ him. So, no doubt, Mr. Worthing, you'd rather pay the bill.
Pay it? How on earth am I going to do that? You don't suppose I've got any money? How perfectly silly you are. No gentleman ever has any money.
It is my experience, sir, that it's usually relations who pay.
Jack, you really must settle this bill.
Kindly allow me to see the particular items, Mr. Grimsby. £762, 14 shillings and twopence since last October. I am bound to say I have never seen such reckless extravagance in all my life.
762 pounds per eating. Oh, that could be very little good in any young man who eats so much and so often.
We are far from Wordsworth's plain living and high thinking.
Now, Dr. Choswell, do you believe that I am in any way called upon to pay this monstrous bill for my brother?
I am bound to say that you are not. It would only be encouraging his profligacy.
As a man sows, so let him reap. The supposed incarceration might be most salutary. It's to be regretted it is only for 20 days.
I am quite of your opinion.
My dear fellow, how ridiculous you are. You know perfectly well that the bill is really yours.
Mine!
Yes, you know it is.
Mr. Worthing, if this is some jest, it is most out of place.
It's gross effrontery. Just what I expected from him.
And it is gratitude. I did not expect that.
Never mind what he says, this is the way he always goes on. Do you mean to say now that you are not Ernest Worthing of B4, the Albany? While you are at it, why don't you deny being my brother at all? Go on. Why don't you?
Oh, I am not going to do that, my dear fellow. It would be absurd. Of course I'm your brother. And that is why you should pay this bill for me.
I will tell you quite candidly that I have not the slightest intention of doing anything of the kind. Dr. Choswell, the worthy rector of our parish, and Miss Prism, in whose admirable and sound judgment I place great reliance, are both of the opinion that this incarceration would do you a great deal of good. And I think so too.
I am sorry to disturb this pleasant family meeting, but time presses. We have to be at Holloway not later than 4 o'clock, as it is difficult to obtain admission. The rules are very strict.
Holloway?
Yes, it is at Holloway that detentions of this character take place always.
Oh, well, I certainly am not going to be imprisoned in the suburbs for having dined in the West End.
The bill is for suppers, not for dinners.
I really don't care. All I say is that I'm not going to be imprisoned in the suburbs.
The surroundings, I admit, are middle class, but the jail itself is fashionable and well-aired, and there are ample opportunities of taking exercise at certain stated hours of the day. In the case of a medical certificate, the hours can be extended.
Exercise? Good God. No gentleman ever takes any exercise. You don't seem to understand what a gentleman is.
I have met so many of them, sir. I'm afraid I don't. Will you kindly come with me now? It won't be an inconvenience. Jack?
Pray be firm, Mr. Worthing.
This is a situation on any weakness may be viewed as self-deception.
I am quite firm, and I don't know what weakness or deception of any kind is.
Uncle Jack, I think you have a little money of mine, haven't you? Let me pay this bill. I wouldn't want your own brother to be in prison.
I couldn't possibly let you pay it, Cecily. That would be absurd.
Well, then you will, won't you? I think you would be terribly sorry if you knew your own brother was shut up.
You will never speak to him again, will you, Cecily?
Certainly not. Unless, of course, he speaks to me first. It would be rude not to answer him.
Well, I shall take very good care he never speaks to you or anyone else in this house. The man should be cut. Mr. Grimsby,
Yes, sir?
I'll pay this bill for my brother. It is the last bill I shall ever pay for him, too. How much is it?
£762, 14 shillings, twopence. And the cab will be 9 and 5 pence extra, higher for the convenience of the client.
All right.
Must say I find such generosity to be quite foolish.
The heart is its wisdom as well as the mind, Miss Prism.
Be able to park it on Grimsby, I suppose.
Yes, sir. But kindly don't cross the check. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Good day. Good day. Good day. I hope I shall have the pleasure of meeting you again.
I sincerely hope not. What ideas you have of the sort of society a gentleman wants to mix in. No gentleman ever wants to know a solicitor who wants to imprison one in the suburbs.
Quite so. Quite so.
By the way, Grimsby, you're not to go back to the station in that cab. That is my cab. It was taken from my convenience. You have got to walk back to the station, and a very good thing, too. Solicitors don't walk nearly enough. I don't know any solicitor who takes sufficient exercise. As a rule, they sit in stuffy offices all day long, neglecting their business.
You can take the cab, Mr. Grimsby.
Thank you, sir.
The day is getting very sultry, isn't it, Dr. Chasuble?
Very thundering here. Mr. Worthing, did you read the Times yet this morning? There's a very interesting article in it about the religious growth amongst the laity.
I'm saving it for after dinner.
Luncheon is on the table, sir.
Aha, that is good news. I'm excessively hungry.
But you have lunched already.
Lunched already?
Yes, I gave him some of the pâté de foie gras sandwiches in a small bottle of that champagne that your doctor ordered for you.
My 74 champagne?
I thought you would want him to have the same one as yourself.
Well, if he has lunched once, he can't be expected to lunch again. That would be absurd.
Taking 2 lunches in one day would not be liberty. It would be license.
Even the pagan philosophers condemned excess in eating. Aristotle speaks of it with severity.
Doctor, would you please kindly escort the ladies into luncheon?
With pleasure.
This bunburying hasn't been much of a success after all, Algy. I don't think it is a very good day for bunburying myself.
Oh, there are ups and downs in bunburying, just as there are in everything else. I'd be all right if you would let me have some lunch. The main thing is that I've seen Cecily, and she is a darling.
You are not to speak of Miss Cardew like that. And you are not going to have any lunch, and you have lunched already.
I only had some champagne and 1 or 2 sandwiches.
Yes, my champagne and 1 or 2 of my sandwiches.
What? I don't like your clothes. You look perfectly ridiculous in them. There is no use in being in mourning for me any longer. I have never been in better health than I am at the present moment. Why on earth don't you go up and change? It is perfectly childish to be in deep mourning for a man who's actually staying for a whole week with you, in your house, as a guest.
You are not staying with me for a week as a guest or anything else. You have got to go.
I certainly won't leave you so long as you are in mourning. It would be most unfriendly.
Will you go if I change my clothes?
Yes, if you're not too long. I never saw anybody take so long to dress, and with such little result.
Well, then it's better than always being continually overdressed as you are.
If I'm occasionally a little overdressed, I make up for it by being always immensely overeducated.
Your vanity is ridiculous, your conduct an outrage, and your presence in my garden utterly absurd! However, you have got to catch the 3:50, and I wish you a pleasant journey back to town. This bunburying, as you call it, has not been a great success for you.
I think it has been a great success. I'm in love with Cecily, and that is everything. It's all very well, but one can't bunbury when one is hungry. I think I'll join them at lunch.
I promised Uncle Jack I wouldn't speak to you unless you asked me a question first. I can't understand why you don't ask me a question of some kind.
Cecily, mayn't I go into lunch?
I wonder you could look me in the face after your conduct.
Well, I love looking you in the face.
But why did you try to place that horrid bill on poor Uncle Jack? I think it was inexcusable of you.
I know it was, but the fact is I've got a most wretched memory. I quite forgot I owed the Savoy £762, 14 shillings and tuppence.
Well, I must admit that I'm glad to hear that you have a bad memory. Good memories are not a quality that most women admire much in men.
Cecily, I am fearfully hungry.
I don't understand your being so hungry considering all that you've had to eat since last October.
Those suppers were for poor Bunbury. Late suppers are the only things his doctor allows him to eat.
Well, then it's no wonder that Mr. Bunbury is always so ill if he eats suppers for 6 or 8 people every night of the week.
That is what I always tell him, but he seems to think his doctors know best.
Well, of course I don't want you to starve, so I've told the butler to send you out some lunch.
Cecily, what a perfect angel you are. May I not see you again before I go?
Miss Prism and I always meet here after lunch. I always have my afternoon lessons under the yew tree.
Couldn't you invent something to get Miss Prism out of the way?
Do you mean invent a falsehood?
Oh, no. Not a falsehood, of course. Simply something that is not quite true, but should be.
Oh, I'm afraid I couldn't do that. I shouldn't know how. People never think of cultivating a young girl's imagination nowadays. It is the great defect of modern education. Of course, if you happened to mention that dear Dr. Chasuble was waiting somewhere for Miss Prism, she would certainly go and meet him. She never likes to keep him waiting, and she has so few opportunities of doing so.
What a capital suggestion.
I did not suggest anything, Cousin Ernest. I merely pointed out that if you adopted a certain line of conduct, a certain result would follow.
Of course. I beg your pardon, Cousin Cecily. Then I shall come here at 3:30. I have something very serious to say to you.
Serious?
Yes, very serious.
Well, in that case, I think we should meet inside of the house. I don't like talking seriously in the open air. It looks so artificial.
Then where shall we meet?
The dog cart is at the door. You've got to go. Your place is by Cecily! Don't you think, Cecily, that you had better return to Miss Prism and Dr. Chasuble?
Yes, Uncle Jack. Goodbye, Cousin Ernest. I'm afraid I shan't be seeing you again, as I have my afternoon lessons with Miss Prism in the drawing room at 3:30.
Goodbye, Cousin Cecily. You have been very kind to me.
Now look here, Algy. You have got to go, and the sooner you go, the better. Bunbury is extremely ill, and your place is by his side.
I can't go at the present moment. I must first just have my second lunch. And you will be pleased to hear that Bunbury is very much better.
Well, you've got to go at 3:50 at any rate. I've ordered your things to be packed, and the dog cart to come.
Cecily. Cecily. You are again writing in your diary. I have had occasion more than once to speak to you about that morbid habit of yours.
The fact is, dear Miss Prism, that I've only chronicled the events of today up till 2:15, and it was at 2:30 that the fearful catastrophe occurred.
Pardon me, dear Cecily. It was at exactly 1:45 that Dr. Chasuble mentioned the very painful views held by the primitive church on marriage.
Oh, but I was not referring to Dr. Chasuble at all. In fact, I was alluding to the tragic exposure of poor Mr. Earnest Worthing.
Mr. Ernest Worthing is a thoroughly bad young man.
I fear he must be. It is the only explanation I can find of his strange attractiveness.
I must entreat of you not to be led away by whatever superficial qualities this young man may possess.
Believe me, Miss Prism, it is only the superficial qualities that last. Man's deeper nature is soon found out.
Child, I do not know where you get such ideas. They are certainly not to be found in any of the improving books I have procured for you.
Are there ever any ideas in those improving books? I fear not. I get my ideas in the garden.
Then you should certainly not be left so much in the open air. The fact is, you have fallen lately, Cecily, into a bad habit of thinking for yourself. You should give it up. It's not quite womanly. Men don't like it. Mr. Worthing, I thought, I must say I was in hopes that you had already returned to town.
My departure will not long be delayed. I have come to bid you goodbye, Miss Cardew. I am informed that a dog cart has been already ordered for me. I have no option but to go back again into the cold world.
I hardly know what you could mean by using such an expression. The day, even for the month of July, is unusually warm.
Profligacy is apt to dull the senses.
No doubt. I am far from defending the weather. I think, however, that it is only my duty to mention to you, Miss Prism, that Dr. Chasuble is expecting you in the vestry.
In the vestry? That sounds serious. It can hardly be for a trivial purpose that the rector selects a place of such solemn associations for an interview. It would not be right to keep him waiting, Cecily.
It would be very, very wrong. The vestry, I am told, is excessively damp.
True! And the doctor is sadly rheumatic. Mr. Worthing, you will allow me, I trust, to express a sincere hope that you will turn over a new leaf in life.
I have already begun an entire volume, Miss Prism.
I am delighted to hear it. And do not forget, there is hope even for the most depraved. Oh, do not be idle, Cecily.
I have no intention of being idle. I realize only too strongly that I have a great deal of serious work before me.
Just as it should be, dear.
This parting, Miss Cardew, is very painful.
It is always hard to part from one whom you've only known for a very brief space of time. the absence of an old friend one can adore with equanimity, but even a momentary separation from one whom you've only been introduced is almost unbearable.
Thank you.
The dog cart is at the door, sir.
It can wait, Merriman, for 5 minutes.
Yes, miss.
I hope you shall not be offended if I state quite frankly and openly that you seem to me to be in every way the visible personification of absolute perfection.
I think your frankness does you great credit, Mr. Worthing. I hope you will allow me to copy your remarks into my diary.
Do you really keep a diary? I'd give anything to look at it, may I?
Oh, no! You see, it is simply a very young girl's record of her own thoughts and impressions, and consequently meant for publication. But pray don't stop, Mr. Worthing. I delight in taking down from dictation. I have reached absolute perfection. You can go on. I'm quite ready for more. Oh, pray don't cough, Mr. Worthing. When one is dictating, one should speak fluently and not cough. Besides, I don't know how to spell a cough.
Miss Cardew, ever since 12:30 this afternoon, when I first looked upon your wonderful and incomparable beauty, I have not merely been your abject slave and servant, but, soaring upon the pinions of a possibly monstrous ambition, I have dared to love you, wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
Oh, pray say that all over again. You speak far too fast and far too indistinctly.
Miss Cardew, ever since you were 12:30, I mean ever since it was 12:30 this afternoon, when I first looked upon your wonderful and incomparable beauty,
Yes, I have got that all right.
I have not merely been your abject slave and servant, but soaring on the pinions of a possibly monstrous ambition, I have dared to love you. Wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
I have not taken down hopelessly. It doesn't seem to make much sense now, does it?
Cecily!
Is that the beginning of an entirely new paragraph, or should it be followed by a note of admiration?
This is the beginning of the entire new existence for me, and it shall be followed by such notes of admiration that my whole life shall be a subtle and sustained symphony of love, praise, and adoration combined.
Oh, that doesn't make much sense at all. The fact is that men should never try to dictate to women. They never know how to do it, and when they do it, they always say something particularly foolish.
I don't care whether what I say is foolish or not. All I know is that I love you, Cecily. I love you. I want you. I can't live without you, Cecily. You know I love you. Will you marry me? Will you be my wife?
Oh, you have made me make a blot, and yours is the only real proposal I have ever received in all my life. I should have liked to have entered it neatly.
The dog cart is still waiting, sir.
I'd like to come round next week at the same hour.
Very good, sir.
Uncle Jack would be very much annoyed if he knew you were staying on till next week at the same hour.
Oh, I don't care about Jack. I don't care for anybody in the whole world but you. I love you. Cecily, you will marry me, won't you?
You silly boy, of course. Why, we have been engaged for the last 5 months.
For the last 5 months.
Yes, 5 months all but a few days. It will be 5 months on Thursday.
I didn't know. But how did we become engaged?
Well, ever since dear Uncle Jack first confessed to us that he had a younger brother who was very wicked and bad, you, of course, have formed the chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prism. And, of course, any man who is very much talked about is always very attractive. I dare say it was foolish of me, but I fell in love with you, Ernest.
Darling. But when was the engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February last, worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I determined to end the matter one way or the other, and after a long struggle with myself, I finally accepted you one evening in the garden. The next day, I went out and bought this little ring in your name. You see, I always wear it, Ernest. And though it shows that you are sadly extravagant, still I have long ago forgiven you for that. Here in this drawer are all the little gifts I have given you from time to time, neatly numbered and labeled. Here is the pearl necklace you gave me on my birthday. And here is the box in which I keep all of your letters.
My letters? Oh, but my own sweet Cecily, I have never written you any letters.
You need hardly remind me of that, Ernest. I remember only too well. I grew tired of asking the postman if he had any London letters for me. My health began to give way under the strain and anxiety, so I wrote your letters for you. And I had them posted to me in the village by my London maid. You see, I wrote always 3 times a week and sometimes oftener.
Oh, do let me read them, Cecily.
Oh, I couldn't possibly. They would make you far too conceited. The 3 you wrote me after I had broken off our engagement are so beautiful and so badly spelt that even now I can hardly read them without crying a little.
Was our engagement ever broken off?
Of course it was. On the 22nd of last March. You can read the entry if you'd like. Today I broke off my engagement with Ernest. I feel it is better to do so. The weather still continues charming.
Why on earth did you break it off? What had I done? I had done nothing at all. Cecily, I am very much hurt indeed to hear you broke it off, particularly when the weather was so charming.
Men seem to forget very easily. I should have thought you would have remembered the violent letter you sent me because I danced with Lord Councillor at the county ball.
But I did take it all back, Cecily. Didn't I?
Of course you did. If you didn't, I wouldn't have forgiven you or accepted this little gold bangle with the diamond and turquoise.
Did I give you that, Cecily? It's very pretty, isn't it?
Of course it is. You have wonderfully good taste, Ernest. It is the reason I've always excused you for your living such a bad life.
My own wife. So, we have been engaged for 5 months, Cecily.
Yes, how the time has flown, hasn't it?
I don't think so. I found the days very long and very dreary without you.
You dear romantic boy. I hope your hair curls naturally, does it?
Yes, darling.
I'm so glad.
You'll never break off our engagement again, Cecily.
Oh, I don't think I could now that I have met you. Besides, of course, there is the question of your name.
How do you mean?
You must not laugh at me, darling, but it has always been a girlish dream of mine to love someone whose name was Ernest. There is something in the name that inspires one with absolute confidence. I pity any married woman whose husband is not called Ernest.
But, my dear child, do you mean to say you could not love me if I had some other name?
But you have no other name.
That is quite true. But supposing that my godfathers and godmother had given me some other name.
But what name?
Oh, any name you like. Algernon, for instance.
But I don't like the name of Algernon.
Well, my own sweet darling, I really can't see why you should object to the name of Algernon. It is not at all a bad name. In fact, it is rather an aristocratic name.
I fear it must be.
Oh, of course there are Algies and Algies, but I know lots of Algies who are very respectable Algies.
Oh, I don't think I would like those Algies at all.
But seriously, Cecily, if my name was Algie, couldn't you love me?
I might respect you, Ernest. I might admire your character, but I fear I would not be able to give you my undivided attention.
How perfectly terrible.
Why, Ernest?
Oh, nothing, darling. Cecily, your rector here is, I suppose, thoroughly experienced in the practice of all the rites and ceremonials of the church.
Oh, yes. Dr. Chasuble is a very learned man. He has never written a single book in his entire life, so you can imagine how much he knows.
I must see him at once on a most important christening. I mean, on most important business. I shan't be away more than half an hour, darling.
Well, seeing as how we have been engaged since February the 14th, and I've only met you today for the first time, I think it is rather hard that you should leave me for a period so long as half an hour. Couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
I'll be back in no time.
Dear sweet boy he is. I like his hair so much. I must go enter his proposal in my diary.
Miss Fairfax has just called to see Mr. Worthing on some very important business.
Is Mr. Worthing not in his library?
Mr. Worthing went over in the direction of the rectory some time ago.
Pray show the lady in. Mr. Worthing is sure to be back soon, and you can bring tea.
Yes, miss.
Miss Fairfax, surely one of the good women associated with Uncle Jack and his philanthropic work in London. I'm not sure I like women who are interested in philanthropic work. It is so forward of them.
Miss Fairfax?
a very sweet name. Something tells me that we're going to be great friends. I like you already more than I can say. My first impressions of people are never wrong.
How nice of you to like me so much after we have known each other for such a comparatively short time. Pray sit down.
I may call you Cecily, may I not?
With pleasure.
And you will always call me Gwendolyn, won't you?
If you wish.
Then that is all quite settled, is it not?
I hope so.
Perhaps this will not be a bad opportunity for my mentioning who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. You have never heard of Papa, I suppose.
I don't think so.
Outside the family circle, Papa, I'm glad to say, is entirely unknown. I think that's quite as it should be. The home seems to me to be the proper sphere for the man, and certainly once a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes painfully effeminate, does he not? And I don't like that. It makes men so very attractive. Mama, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has brought me up to be extremely short-sighted. It is part of the system. So do you mind my looking at you through my glasses?
Not at all, Gwendolyn. I'm very fond of being looked at.
You are here on a short visit, I suppose.
Oh no, I live here.
Really? Your mother, no doubt, some female relative of advanced years, resides here also?
Oh no, I have no mother, nor in fact any relations.
Indeed.
My dear guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I am Mr. Worthing's ward.
Oh. Strange he never mentioned to me that he had a ward. How secretive of him. He grows more interesting hourly. I'm not sure, however, that the news inspires me with feelings of unmixed delight. I'm very fond of you, Cecily. I've liked you ever since I met you. But I'm bound to state that now that I know that you are Mr. Worthing's ward, I cannot help expressing the wish you were, well, just a little older than you seem to be, not quite so very alluring in appearance. In fact, if I may speak candidly...
Oh, pray do, Gwendolyn. I think that whenever one has anything unpleasant to say, one should always be quite candid.
Well, to speak candidly, Cecily, I wish that you were fully 35 and more than usually plain for your age. Ernest has a strong, upright nature. He is the very soul of truth and honor. But even men of the noblest possible moral character are extremely susceptible to the influence of the physical charms of others.
Pardon me, Gwendolyn. Did you say Ernest?
Yes.
Oh, but it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is my guardian. It is his brother, his elder brother.
Ernest never mentioned to me that he had a brother.
I'm sorry to say they have not been on good terms for a very long time.
Ah, that counts for it. Cecily, you have lifted a load from my mind. I was growing almost anxious. It would have been terrible if any cloud had come across a friendship like ours, would it not? Of course, you are quite sure that it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is your guardian?
Quite sure. In fact, I'm going to be his.
I beg your pardon?
Dearest Gwendolyn, I see no reason why I should make any secret of it to you. Our little county newspaper is sure to chronicle the event next week. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
My darling Cecily, I think there must be some slight error. Mr. Ernest Worthing is engaged to me. The announcement will appear in the Morning Post on Saturday at the latest.
Gwendolyn, you must be under some misconception. Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
Certainly very curious, for he asked me to be his wife yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you would care to verify the incident, pray do so. I never travel without my diary. One should always have something sensational to read in a train. I am so sorry, dear Cecily, if it is any disappointment to you, but I'm afraid I have the prior claim.
It would distress me more than I can say. Dear Gwendolyn, if it caused you any mental or physical anguish, but I feel bound to point out that since Ernest proposed to you, he has clearly changed his mind.
If the poor fellow has been entrapped into any foolish promise, I will consider it my duty to rescue him at once, and with a firm hand.
Whatever unfortunate entanglement my dear boy has gotten himself into, I promise not to reproach him with it after we are married.
Do you allude to me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement? You are presumptuous. On an occasion of this kind, it becomes more than moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
Do you suggest, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Ernest into an engagement? How dare you? This is no time for wearing the shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
I'm glad to say that I have never seen a spade. It is obvious that the social spheres have been widely different.
Shall I lay tea here as usual, miss?
Yes, as usual.
Quite a charming room this is of yours, Miss Cardew.
So glad you like it, Miss Fairfax.
I had no idea there was anything approaching good taste in the more remote country districts. It is quite a surprise to me.
I'm afraid you judge of the country from what one sees in town. I believe most London houses are extremely vulgar.
I suppose they do dazzle the rural mind. Personally, I cannot understand how anybody manages to exist in the country. If anybody who is anybody does, the country always bores me to death.
That is what the newspapers are calling agricultural depression, is it not? I believe the aristocracy are suffering from it very greatly at present. It is almost an epidemic amongst them, isn't it? May I offer you some tea, Miss Fairfax?
Thank you. Detestable girl, but I require tea.
Sugar.
No, thank you. Sugar is not fashionable anymore.
Cake or bread and butter?
Bread and butter, please. Cake is rarely seen at the best houses nowadays.
Hand that to Miss Fairfax. Thank you.
You have filled my tea with lumps of sugar, and though I asked most distinctly for bread and butter, you have given me cake. I know the gentleness of my disposition and the extraordinary sweetness of my nature, but I warn you, Miss Cardew, you may go too far.
To save my poor, innocent, trusting boy from the machinations of any other woman, there are no lengths to which I would not go.
From the moment I saw you, I distrusted you. I felt that you were false and deceitful. I never deceived in such matters. My first impressions of people are invariably right.
It seems to me, Miss Fairfax, that I'm trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt you have many calls of a similar character to be making in the neighborhood.
Ernest, my own Ernest.
Darling Gwendolen,
A moment. May I ask if you are engaged to be married to this young lady?
dear little Cecily. Of course not. What could put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
Gwendolen, I knew there must have been some kind of misunderstanding. The man whose arms at present round your waist is my dear guardian, Mr. John Worthing.
I beg your pardon.
This is Uncle Jack.
Jack! Oh!
Here is Ernest.
My own love.
May I ask if you are engaged to be married to this young lady?
To what young lady? Good heavens, Gwendolen.
Yes, to good heavens, Gwendolen. I mean to Gwendolen.
Of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I felt there was some slight error, Miss Cardew. The gentleman who is now embracing you is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief.
Algernon Moncrief! Oh. Are you called Algernon?
I cannot deny it.
Is your name really John?
I could deny it if I liked. I could deny anything if I liked. Yes, my name really is John. It has been John for years.
A gross deception has been practiced on the both of us.
My poor wounded Cecily.
My sweet wronged Gwendolen.
Call me sister, will you not?
Thank you for those words. And now there is just one question I would like to be allowed to ask my guardian.
An admirable idea. Mr. Worthing, there is just one question I would like to be permitted to put to you. Where is your brother Ernest? We are both engaged to be married to your brother Ernest. So it is a matter of some importance to us to know where your brother Ernest is at present.
Gwendolen, Cecily, it is very painful for me to be forced to speak the truth. It is the first time in my life I've ever been reduced to such a position, and I'm very inexperienced at doing anything of the kind, so pray forgive me if I stammer in my tale.
I must beg you to do nothing of the kind. Stammering always gets upon my nerves. Pray say what you have to say without the smallest hesitation in your speech.
In that case, I will tell you quite candidly that I have no brother Ernest. I have no brother at all. I have never had a brother, and certainly have not the slightest intention of having one in the future.
No brother at all.
None.
Had you never a brother of any kind?
Never. Not even of any kind.
But it is quite clear, Cecily, that neither of us is engaged to be married to anyone.
It is not a very pleasant position for a young girl to suddenly find herself in, is it?
Let us go into the garden. They will hardly venture to come after us there.
No, men are so cowardly, aren't they?
Pretty mess you've got me into. What on earth did you mean by coming down here and pretending to be my brother? Perfectly monstrous of you.
What on earth did you mean by pretending to have a brother? It was absolutely disgraceful.
I told you to go away by the 3:50. I ordered the dog cart for you. Why didn't you take it?
I hadn't had my tea.
This ghastly state of affairs is what you call bunburying, I suppose.
I happen to be serious about bunburying. What on earth you are serious about, I haven't got the remotest idea. About everything, I should fancy. You have such an absolutely trivial nature.
Well, the only small consolation I have in the whole of this wretched business is that your friend Bunbury is quite exploded. You won't be able to run down to the country quite so often as you used to, will you, dear boy? And a very good thing, too.
Your brother is a little off color, isn't he? Dear Jack, you won't be able to disappear to London quite as frequently as your wicked custom was. And not a bad thing either.
And as for your conduct towards Miss Cardew, I feel bound to say that your taking in a sweet, simple, innocent girl like Cecily is quite inexcusable. To say nothing of the fact that she is my ward.
I can see no possible defense at all for your deceiving a brilliant, clever, thoroughly experienced young lady like Miss Fairfax. To say nothing of the fact that she is my cousin.
I wanted to be engaged to Gwendolen. I love her. That is all.
Well, I simply wanted to be engaged to Cecily.
There is certainly no chance of your marrying Miss Cardew.
I don't think there is much likelihood, Jack, of you and Miss Fairfax being united.
Well, that is no business of yours.
If it was my business, I wouldn't talk about it. It is very vulgar to talk about one's business. Only people like stockbrokers do that, and then merely at dinner parties.
Algy, how you can sit there calmly eating muffins when we are in this horrible trouble I can't make out. You seem to me to be perfectly heartless.
Well, I can't eat muffins in an agitated manner. The butter would probably get on my cuffs. One should always eat muffins quite calmly.
I say it is perfectly heartless to eat muffins at all under the circumstances.
When I'm in trouble, eating is the only thing that consoles me. Indeed, when I'm in really great trouble, as anyone who knows me intimately will tell you, I refuse everything except food and drink. And at the present moment, I am eating muffins because I am unhappy. Besides, I am particularly fond of muffins.
There is no reason why you should eat them all in that dreamy way.
I wish you would have tea cake instead. I don't like tea cake.
Good heavens, I suppose a man may eat his own muffins in his own house.
But you have just said it was perfectly heartless to eat muffins.
I said it was perfectly heartless of you under the circumstances. That is a very different thing.
That may be, but the muffins are the same.
Algy! I don't want you here. I have already told you to go. What on earth are you staying for?
I haven't finished my tea yet, and after that I've got to be baptized. I have got a heap of things to get through before dinner. What time, by the way, do we dine, Jack? 8?
I have not invited you to dinner. I won't let you stay to dinner. You have got to go.
You can't possibly ask me to go without having some dinner. It is absurd. I never go without my dinner. No one ever does except vegetarians and people like that.
And what do you mean about being baptized after tea?
I have just made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble to be baptized at 5:45 under the name of Earnest.
My dear fellow, the sooner you give up that nonsense, the better. I have made arrangements with myself to be baptized with Dr. Chasuble at 5:30. I shall naturally take the name of Earnest. Gwendolen would wish it. We can't both be christened Earnest, it'd be absurd. Besides, I have a perfect right to be baptized if I like. There is no evidence whatsoever that I have ever been baptized by anybody. I should think it extremely probable I never was, and so does Dr. Chasuble. It is entirely different in your case. You have been baptized already.
Yes, but I have not been baptized in years.
Yes, but you have been baptized. That is the important thing.
Quite so. So I know my constitution can stand it. If you are not quite sure about your ever having been baptized, then I must say I think it rather dangerous you're venturing on it now. It might make you very unwell.
May I ask, Algy, what on earth do you propose to do?
Nothing. That is what I've been trying to do for the last 10 minutes, and you have kept on doing everything in your power to distract my attention from my work.
Well, I shall go to the garden and see Gwendolen. I'm quite sure she expects me.
I know from her extremely cold manner that Cecily expects me, so I certainly shan't go out into the garden. When a man does exactly what a woman expects him to do, she doesn't think much of him. One should always do what a woman doesn't expect, just as one should always say what she doesn't understand. The result is invariably perfect sympathy on both sides.
That is nonsense! You are always talking nonsense!
It is much cleverer to talk nonsense than to listen to it, my dear fellow. And a much rarer thing, too.
I won't listen to you. I can't listen to you.
Oh, that is merely false modesty. You know perfectly well you could listen to me if you tried. You always underrate yourself. An absurd thing to do nowadays when there's such a lot of conceited people about. Jack, you are eating the muffins again. I wish you wouldn't. There are only 2 left. I told you I was particularly fond of muffins.
Tea cake.
Why on earth do you allow tea cake to be served up to your guests, then? What ideas you have of hospitality?
Algy, that is not the point! We are not discussing tea cakes! Algy, you are perfectly maddening. You can never stick to the point in any conversation.
No. It always hurts me.
Good heavens, what affectation? I loathe affectation.
My dear fellow, if you don't like affectation, I really don't see what you can like. Besides, it isn't affectation. The point always does hurt me, and I hate physical pain of any kind.
Algy, I don't want you here. I have already told you to go. Why don't you go?
I haven't quite finished my tea yet. And there is still 1 muffin left.
The fact that they did not follow us at once into the garden, as anyone else would have done, seems to me to show that they have some sense of shame left.
They have been eating muffins. That looks like repentance.
They don't seem to notice us at all. Couldn't you cough?
But I haven't got a cough.
They're looking at us. What effrontery!
They're approaching. It's very forward of them.
Let us preserve a dignified silence.
Certainly. It's the only thing to do now.
This dignified silence does not seem to produce the desired effect.
Quite the reverse.
But we will not be the first to speak.
Certainly not.
Mr. Worthing, I have something very particular to ask you. Much depends on your reply.
Gwendolyn, your common sense is invaluable. Mr. Moncrief, kindly answer me this following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian's brother?
In order that I might have an opportunity of meeting you.
That certainly seems a satisfactory explanation.
Yes, dear, if you can believe him.
I don't, but that does not affect the wonderful beauty of his answer.
True. In matters of grave importance, style, not sincerity, is the vital thing. Mr. Worthing, what explanation can you offer to me for pretending to have a brother? Was it in order that you might have an opportunity of coming up to town to see me as often as possible?
Can you doubt it, Miss Fairfax?
I have the gravest doubts upon the subject, but I intend to crush them. This is no time for skepticism. There is too much skepticism in the age as it is. Your explanations appear to be quite satisfactory, especially Mr. Worthing's.
I'm quite content with what Mr. Moncrief said. His voice alone inspires one with absolute credulity.
Then you think we should forgive them?
Yes. I mean, no.
True, I had forgotten. There are principles at stake that one cannot surrender. Which one of us should tell them? The task is not a pleasant one.
Couldn't we both speak at the same time?
An excellent idea. I often speak at the same time as other people. Will you take the time for me?
Your Christian names are still an absolutely insuperable barrier. That is all.
Our Christian names? Is that all? But we are going to be christened this afternoon.
For my sake, you are prepared to do this terrible thing?
Certainly.
To please me, you are ready to face this fearful ordeal.
I am.
How absurd to talk of the equality of the sexes when questions of self-sacrifice are concerned. Men are infinitely beyond us.
They have moments of physical courage of which we women know absolutely nothing.
Darling.
Lady Bracknell.
Good heavens!
Gwendolyn, what does this mean?
Merely that I'm engaged to be married to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Come here at once.
Certainly, Mamma, but I am engaged to be married to Mr. Worthing.
Silence, child. Come here at once. Hesitation of any kind is a sign of mental decay in the young and physical weakness in the old. Mr. Worthing, apprised of my daughter's flight by her trusty maid, who whose confidence I purchased by means of a small coin. I followed her at once by a luggage train. Her unhappy father is, I am pleased to say, under the impression that she is at a more than usually lengthy lecture at the university extension scheme. Do not propose to undeceive him. You of course understand that for the future there is to be no communication between yourself and my daughter. On this point, as on all points, I am firm.
I am engaged to be married to Gwendolen, Lady Bracknell.
You are nothing of the kind, sir. And now as regards Algernon. Algernon,
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
may I ask if it is in this house that your invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, resides?
Oh, no. Bunbury does not live here. Bunbury is somewhere else at present. In fact, Bunbury is dead.
Dead? But when did Mr. Bunbury die? His death must have been quite sudden.
I killed Bunbury this afternoon. I mean, poor Bunbury died this afternoon.
What did he die of?
Bunbury? Oh, he was quite exploded.
Exploded? Was he the victim of a revolutionary outrage? I was not aware that Mr. Bunbury was involved in social legislation. If so, he is well punished for his morbidity.
My dear Aunt Augusta, I mean he was found out. The doctors found out that Bunbury could not live. That is what I mean. So Bunbury died.
He seems to have had great confidence in the opinion of his physicians. I'm glad, however, that he made up his mind to some definite course of action and acted under proper medical advice. And now that we have buried this Mr. Bunbury at last, Mr. Worthing, may I ask who is this young lady whose hand my nephew Algernon is holding in what seems to me a peculiarly unnecessary manner?
This lady, Lady Bracknell, is Miss Cecily Cardew, my ward.
I am engaged to be married to Cecily, Aunt Augusta.
I beg your pardon?
Mr. Moncrief and I are engaged to be married, Lady Bracknell.
I do not know if there's anything particularly exciting in the air in this part of Hertfordshire, but the amount of engagements that go on seems to me to be well above the proper average that statistics have laid down for our guidance. Mr. Worthing, is Miss Cardew at all connected with any of the larger railway stations in London? I ask merely for information. Until yesterday, I was unaware that there were any persons or families whose origin was a terminus.
Mrs. Cardew is the granddaughter of the late Mr. Thomas Cardew of 149 Belgrave Square, SW, Gervais Park, Dorking, Surrey, and the Sporan, Fifshire, NB.
That is not unsatisfactory. 3 addresses always inspire confidence. What proof have I of the authenticity?
I have preserved the court guides of the period. They are open to your inspection, Lady Bracknell.
I have known strange errors in that publication.
Miss Cardew's family solicitors are Messrs. Markby, and Markby of 149A Lincoln's Inn Fields, Western Central District, London. They would be happy to supply you with further information. Their office hours are from 10 till 4.
Messrs. Markby, and Markby, a firm of the highest position in their profession. Indeed, I have been told that one of the Messrs. Markby is to be seen attending dinner parties. So far, I'm satisfied.
How extremely kind of you, Lady Bracknell. I also have in my possession, you'll be pleased to hear, certificates of Miss Cardew's birth, registration, baptism, whooping cough, vaccination, confirmation, and the measles. Both the German and the English variety.
A life crowded with incident, I see, but perhaps somewhat too exciting for a young girl. I'm not myself in favor of premature experiences. Come, Gwendolen, the time approaches for our arrival. We have not a moment to lose. Mr. Worthing, as a matter of form, I'd better ask if Miss Cardew has got any little fortune.
Oh, about £130,000 in the funds. That is all. Good day, Lady Bracknell. So pleased to have seen you.
A moment, Mr. Worthing. 130,000 and in the funds. Miss Cardew seems to be a very attractive young lady now that I look at her. Few girls of the present day have any really solid qualities. Any of the qualities that last and improve with time. Come here, dear. Pretty child. Your dress is sadly simple, and your hair seems almost as nature might have left it. But we can soon alter that. A thoroughly experienced French maid produces a really marvelous result in a very brief space of time. I remember recommending one to Lady Lansing, and after 3 months, her own husband did not know her.
And after 6 months, nobody knew her.
Kindly turn round, sweet child. No, the side view is what I wanted. Yes, quite as I expected. There are distinct social possibilities in your profile.
Really, Lady Bracknell, how very gratifying.
Child, never fall into the habit, so unfortunately common nowadays, of speaking trivially of serious things. The chin a little higher, I think. Style largely depends on how the chin is worn. There's one point I just at present. Algernon,
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
there are distinct social possibilities in Miss Cardew's profile.
Cecily is the dearest, sweetest, prettiest girl in the whole world. And I don't care tuppence about social possibilities.
Never speak disrespectfully of society, Algernon. Only people who can't get into it do that. Of course, dear, you know that Algernon has nothing but his debts to depend upon. I'm not myself in favor of mercenary marriages. When I married Lord Bracknell, I had no fortune of my own, but I never dreamed of allowing that to stand in my way. I suppose I must give my consent.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Cecily, you may kiss me.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell.
And for the future, you may address me as Aunt Augusta.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
I think the marriage had better take place quite soon.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
I'm not myself in favor of long engagements. They give people the opportunity of finding out one's true character before marriage, which I think is never advisable.
Pray excuse me for interrupting you, Lady Bracknell, but this engagement is quite out of the question. I am Miss Cardew's guardian. She cannot marry without my consent until she comes legally of age. That consent I absolutely decline to give.
Upon what grounds, may I ask? Algernon is an extremely, I may say an ostentatiously eligible young man. To my own knowledge, he is on the lists of nearly all the mothers in London.
It pains me very much to have to speak quite frankly to you, Lady Bracknell, but I do not at all approve of your nephew's moral character. I suspect him of being untruthful.
Untruthful. My nephew Algernon? Impossible.
I fear there can be no possible doubt about the matter. This morning at 12:30, while I was away in London on some important business, he gained entry into my house under the false pretense of being my brother. Under an assumed name, he drank an entire pint bottle of my 74 champagne, a wine I was specially reserving for myself. Continuing his disgraceful deception, he succeeded in the course of the afternoon in alienating the affections of my only ward. He subsequently stayed to tea and devoured every single muffin! And what makes his conduct all the more heartless is that he knew from the first that I have no brother, that I never had a brother, not even of any kind. I distinctly told him so myself yesterday afternoon.
But Uncle Jack, for the last year you have been telling us all that you had a brother. You dwelt continually on the subject. Algy merely corroborated your statement. It was noble of him.
Pardon me, Cecily. You are too young to understand these matters. To invent anything at all is an act of sheer genius, and in a commercial age such as ours requires considerable physical courage. To corroborate a falsehood, on the other hand, is a distinctly cowardly action. It is not the act of a gentleman. No gentleman ever corroborates anything.
On my word, Jack.
Mr. Irving, after careful consideration, I've decided to overlook entirely my nephew's conduct to you, painful though it has been.
That is very generous of you, Lady Bracknell. My own decision, however, is unalterable. I decline to give my consent.
Come here, sweet child. How old are you?
Well, I am really only 18, but I always admit to 20 at evening parties.
You are quite right in making some slight alteration. Nowhere and under no circumstances should a woman ever be really truthful about her age. It looks so calculating. 18, but admitting to 20 at evening parties. Well, whichever date you choose, dear, it will not be long before you become of age and are free from the restraints of tutelage. Therefore, I do not see that your guardian's alliance, consent to this alliance, is of much, if any, importance.
Pray excuse me for interrupting you a second time, Lady Bracknell, but I feel bound to tell you that according to the terms of her grandfather's will, Miss Cardew does not come legally of age until she is 35.
That is no grave objection. 35 is a very attractive age. Indeed, many women in London society of the highest birth remain 35 of their own free will for years. I see no reason why our dear Cecily should not be still more attractive at the age you mentioned than she is now. There will be large accumulation of property.
Uncle Jack, are you sure I cannot marry without your consent till I am 35?
That is the wise provision of your grandfather's will, Cecily. He undoubtedly foresaw the sort of difficulty that would be likely to occur.
Grandpapa must have had an extraordinary imagination. Algy, could you wait for me till I was 35? Don't speak hastily. Much of my future happiness, as well as all of yours, depends upon your answer.
Of course I could, Cecily. How can you ask me such a question? I could wait forever for you. You know I could.
Yes, I felt it instinctively. And I am so sorry for you, because I couldn't wait all that time. I hate waiting even 5 minutes for anyone. I am not punctual myself, I know, but I do like punctuality in others. And waiting even to be married is quite out of the question.
Then what is to be done, Cecily?
I don't know.
Mr. Worthing, as Miss Cardew states positively that she cannot wait until she is 35, a remark which seems to me to show a somewhat impatient nature, I must beg of you to reconsider your decision.
But, my dear Lady Bracknell, the matter is entirely in your own hands. The moment you consent to my marriage to Gwendolen, I shall gladly allow your nephew to form an alliance with my ward.
Surely you must know, sir, that what you propose is out of the question.
Then, a passionate and careful celibacy will be all that any of us can look forward to.
It is not a fate I propose for Gwendolen. Algernon, of course, may choose for himself. Come, Gwendolen, we've already missed 5, if not 6 trains. To miss any more might expose us to comment on the platform.
Everything is quite ready for the christenings. Been waiting on the porch steps now for nearly half an hour.
The christening, sir? Is that not somewhat premature?
Both these gentlemen have expressed an interest in immediate baptism.
At their age, the idea is grotesque and irreligious. Algernon, I forbid you to be christened. Lord Bracknell would be highly displeased if he knew this is the way in which you wasted your time and money.
Am I to understand, then, that there are to be no christenings at all this afternoon?
I don't think that as things now stand, it will be of much practical value to either of us, Dr. Charlespool.
I'm grieved to hear such sentiments from you, Mr. Worthing. Baptismal regeneration is not to be spoken of lightly. Indeed, by the unanimous opinions of the fathers, baptism is a form of new birth. However, where adults are concerned, compulsory christenings, except in the cases of savage tribes, is uncanonical. So therefore I shall return to the church. Indeed, I have just recently been informed, the last hour and a half, Miss Prism has been waiting for me in the vestry.
Miss Prism? Did I hear you mention a Miss Prism?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, I'm on my way to join her now.
Pray allow me to detain you for a moment. The matter may prove to be one of vital importance to Lord Bracknell and myself. Is this Miss Prism a female of repellent aspect, remotely connected with education?
She's the most cultivated of ladies, the very picture of respectability.
It is obviously the same person. May I ask what position she holds in your household?
I'm a celibate, madam.
Miss Prism, Lady Bracknell, has been for the last 3 years Miss Cardew's esteemed governess and companion.
Then allow me to strongly advise you, Mr. Worthing, should she turn out to be the woman I suspect her of being, never under any circumstances to allow her to take Miss Cardew out in a perambulator. The result might be lamentable. I must speak to this Miss Prism at once. Let her be sent for.
She approaches. Oh, she is young.
I was told you expected me in the vestry, dear Canon. I've been waiting for you there for nearly an hour and 3/4.
Prism. Come here, Prism. Prism, where is that baby? 28 years ago, Prism, you left Lord Bracknell's house, number 104 Upper Grosvenor Street, in charge of a perambulator that contained a baby of the male sex. You never returned. A few weeks later, through the elaborate investigation of the Metropolitan Police, the perambulator was discovered at midnight in a remote corner of Hyde Park. It contained the manuscript of a 3-volume novel of more than usually revolting sentimentality. But the baby was not there. Prism, where is that baby?
I admit with shame that I do not know. I only wish I did. The plain facts of the case are these. On the morning of the day you mentioned, a day that is forever branded in my memory, I prepared as usual to take the baby out of its perambulator. I had with me an old but capacious handbag in which I intended to place the manuscript of a 3-volume novel I had written during my few unoccupied hours. In a moment of mental abstraction, for which I can never forgive myself, I placed the manuscript in the bassinet and the baby in the handbag.
But where did you deposit the handbag?
Do not ask me, Mr. Worthing.
Miss Prism, this is a matter of no small importance to me. I insist on knowing where you deposited the handbag that contained the infant.
In the cloakroom of one of the larger railway stations in London.
What railway station?
Victoria, the Brighton line.
I sincerely hope that nothing improbable is going to happen here. Improbable is always in bad, or at any rate questionable taste.
I must retire to my bedroom for a moment.
Mr. Worthing, It seems this news has upset you. I trust your indisposition is merely temporary.
I will be back in a few moments, dear Canon. Gwendolyn, wait here for me.
If you are not too long, I will wait here for you all my life.
What do you suppose this means, Lady Bracknell?
Dare not even suspect. Need not tell you, Dr. Toswell, that in families of high position, strange coincidences are not supposed to occur. They're hardly considered the thing.
Uncle Jack seems strangely agitated.
Guardian has a very emotional nature.
The noise is extremely unpleasant. It sounds as if he was having an argument with the furniture.
It is stopped.
Now it has begun again.
Wish you would arrive at some conclusion.
This suspense is terrible. I hope it will last.
Miss Prism, is this the handbag that contained the infant? Examine it carefully before you speak. The happiness of more than one life depends upon your reply.
It appears to be mine. Ah, yes. Here is the injury it received through the overturning of a Gower Street omnibus in younger and happier days. Oh, and here is the indelible stain left by the accidental explosion of a temperance beverage, an incident that occurred in Leamington. And here are the lock of my initials. I'd forgotten that I had had them placed there. The bag is undoubtedly mine. It's been a great inconvenience being without it all these years. Delighted to have it restored to me.
Miss Prism, more is restored to you than the handbag. I was the baby you placed in it.
You?
Yes. Mother!
Mr. Worthing! Unmarried!
Unmarried! I do not know. But who has a right to throw a stone against one who has suffered? Cannot repentance wipe out an act of folly? Why should there be one law for men and another for women? Mother, I forgive you.
Mr. Worthing! There is still some error. Maternity has never been an incident in my lifetime. The accusation, if it were not made before such a large number of people, would be almost indelicate. There sits the lady who can tell you who you really are.
Lady Bracknell, I hate to seem inquisitive, but would you kindly inform me who I am?
I'm afraid that the news I have to give you will not altogether please you. You are the son of my poor sister, Mrs. Moncrief, and consequently, Algernon's elder brother.
Algy's elder brother! Then I have a brother after all. I always said I had a brother. Cecily, would you have ever doubted that I had a brother? Dr. Choswell, my unfortunate brother. Miss Prism, my unfortunate brother. Gwendolyn, my unfortunate brother. Algy, you will have to treat me with more respect in the future. You have never behaved to me like a brother in all your life.
Well, not till today, old boy, I admit. I did my best, however, though I was out of practice.
Darling.
Darling.
Under these strange and unforeseen circumstances, you may kiss your Aunt Augusta.
I am dazed with happiness. I hardly know who I am kissing.
I hope that will be the last time I shall ever hear you make such an observation.
It will, darling.
Mr. Worthing, Mr. Moncrief, as I shall call you now, I feel that after what has occurred here today, it my duty to resign my position in this household. Any inconvenience I may have caused you through inadvertently placing in you my handbag, I
Don't mention it, Miss Prism. Don't mention anything. I'm sure I had a very pleasant time of it in your nice handbag, despite the slight damage it may have received through the overturning of an omnibus in younger and happier days. As for leaving us, the suggestion is absurd.
I really have nothing more to teach, dear Cecily. I feel that in the difficult accomplishment of getting married, my sweet and clever pupil has far outstripped her teacher.
A moment, Letitia. Letitia. I've come to the conclusion that the church was on error on some topics. It seems corrupt readings have crept into the text. Therefore, I beg to solicit the honor of your hand.
Friedrich, at the present moment once fail to express my feelings, but I will forward you this evening the last 3 volumes of my diary, in which you can peruse a full account of the sentiments I have held towards you for the last 18 months.
Lady Bracknell's Flymans, has he not wait any longer?
True, I must return to town at once. Prism, I learn with regret from your last observation to Dr. Chasuble that you have not given up your ridiculously sentimental passion for fiction in 3 volumes. And if you do intend to enter into matrimony, which I feel bound to say at your age seems somewhat like flying in the face of an all-wise providence, I trust you'll be more careful of your husband than you were of your infant charge, and not leave poor Dr. Chasuble lying about at railway stations in handbags or receptacles of any kind. Cloakrooms are notoriously drafty places. Dr. Chasuble, you have my sincere good wishes, and if baptism be as you say it is a form of new birth, I would strongly advise you to have Miss Prism baptized at once. To be born again would be of considerable advantage to her. Sweet child, we'll expect you at Upper Grosvenor Street in a few days.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Come, Gwendolen.
My own. But what own are you? What is your Christian name now that you have become someone else?
Good heavens, I had quite forgotten that point. Your decision on the subject of my name is irrevocable, I suppose.
I never change, except in my affections.
What a noble nature you have, Gwendolen.
Then the matter is better be cleared up at once. Aunt Augusta, a moment. At the time when I have been placed in Miss Prism's handbag, have I already been christened? Pray be calm. This is a terrible crisis, and everything hangs upon the nature of your reply.
Every luxury that money could buy has been lavished upon you by your fond and doting parents.
Then I was christened. That is settled. Now, what name was I given? Let me know the worst.
Being the eldest son, you were naturally christened for your father. I distinctly remember your being christened for your father.
Yes, but what was my father's Christian name? Pray don't be so calm, Aunt Augusta. This is a terrible crisis, and everything hangs upon the nature of your reply. What was my father's Christian name?
I cannot at present recall what the general's Christian name was. Have no doubt he had one.
Algy, can't you recollect what our father's Christian name was?
My dear boy, we never were on those sort of terms. Indeed, I don't think we can ever have been, even on speaking terms. He died, I believe, before I was a year old.
His name would appear in the army list of the period, I suppose, Aunt Augusta.
The general was essentially a peaceful man, except in his domestic life. I have no doubt his name would appear in any military directory.
The army list of the last 40 years I have here. I see now how foolish I have been to neglect them for more trivial works like treatises on bimetallism, books on agriculture, and novels with a purpose. Miss Prism, Dr. Chasuble here. 2 for you. Cecily, an army list, make a place here at once. Algernon, pray search English history for our father's Christian name. If you have the slightest filial affection left, Aunt Augusta, I would beg you to bring your masculine mind to bear on the subject. Gwendolen, no. It would agitate you too much. Leave these researches to less philosophic natures like ours.
Give me 6 copies of any period, this century or the last. I do not care which.
Noble girl, here are a dozen. More might be an inconvenience to you.
Mr. Worthing, what station did you say you wish to go to?
Station? Who on earth is talking about a station? I merely want to find out what my father's Christian name is.
You've had to be a Bradshaw, sir. Of 1849, I observe. A book of great antiquarian interest, but not at all weighing in on the names given to generals at baptism.
I'm so sorry, Uncle Jack, but generals don't even seem to be alluded to in the history of our own times, although it is the best edition.
To me, Mr. Worthing, you have handed a price list of the silver service stores. You can't find generals listed anywhere. Appear to be either no demand or no supply.
This treatise, The Green Carnation, as I see it is called, seems to be a book about the culture of exotics. It contains no reference to generals in it. It is a morbid and middle-class affair.
And what nonsense are you reading, Algy? An army list? Well, I don't suppose you knew it was an army list. Look, you only open on the wrong page, and here's the thing, right in front of you. M, generals. Malum, what ghastly names they have. Mark B, Meaksby, Mobbs, Moncrief. Lieutenant 1840, Captain, Lieutenant Colonel, Colonel General 1860. Christian names, Ernest John. I always said my name was Ernest, didn't I? It is Ernest. I mean, it naturally is Ernest.
I remember now that this general was called Earnest. I knew I had some particular reason for disliking the name. Come, Gwendolyn.
Ernest, my own Ernest. I thought from the first that you could have had no other name. Even all man's useless information, wonderful though it is nothing compared to the instinct of a good woman.
Gwendolyn, it is a terrible thing for a man to find out quite suddenly that all his life he has been speaking nothing but the truth. Can you forgive me?
I can, for I feel that you are sure to change. There is always hope, even for those who are most accurate in their statements.
My own one.
Letitia.
Cecily.
Gwendolyn.
I have missed the last train. My nephew, you seem to be displaying signs of triviality.
On the contrary, Aunt Augusta, I now realize for the first time in my life the vital importance of being earnest.